Hi everyone, this video is to catch you up if you missed class on Thursday, so you are ready to participate in everything for Friday. We are talking about how the cotton industry impacted slavery in the United States before the Civil War. By the end of Friday, after you've done this lesson and Friday's work, you should be able to describe how the cotton gin impacted the number of cotton plantations and slaves that were living in the South before the Civil War. So to go over the background reading, I'm not going to have you read it from yesterday, but what we learned is that by the end of the 1700s, the amount of slaves in the United States was decreasing as cash crops like indigo and rice and tobacco became less profitable for people. They were growing less of those crops, which meant they did not need as many slaves. So people started freeing some of their slaves. Others realized that it was morally wrong, so they again started freeing their slaves. Okay, so what I would like you to look at is your Document A chart. Okay, so we just learned from the background reading that I just talked to you about that in the 1700s, by the end, the slave population in the United States was going down. Okay, using this chart, I'd like you to look as time increases, so we get to the 1800s, on question 1 on your document analysis sheet. According to this chart, what happened to the slave population from 1790 to 1860? So take a minute to examine that chart, and then we'll talk about it. So what you should be seeing is that as the years are increasing and we get into the 1800s, our slave population is also increasing, and it starts increasing very rapidly by each decade. Okay, an important date for us to note is that in 1807, the slave trade is made illegal, yet the slave population continues to rise. So for question 2 on your packet, I'd like you to make a prediction. This is like a thesis statement, your main point. Why would the slave population continue to grow even though the slave trade has ended, and we know by the end of the 1700s, people were freeing slaves? So I'd like you to pause and take a minute to make a prediction. The number of enslaved people began to increase after 1790 because, to give you a little bit of a hint from the background reading, we saw that the slave population decreased when the value of cash crops decreased. So if we see that the slave population is increasing, we could make a connection that a certain cash crop might also be increasing. So go ahead and pause and take a minute to make a prediction. Why is the number of slaves increasing at this point? Okay, so to continue and give you a little more background, what we learn and what we now know is there was a key moment in history that led to this drastic increase in the slave population. And that happened in the year 1793, which is when an inventor named Eli Whitney creates something called the cotton gin. So we're going to look at the cotton gin now to see what that is and how it impacted people in the South. Specifically, how did it increase the slave population in the South? Okay, so what these charts show us is that as cotton production, cotton is the main cash crop we're talking about here, as it began to increase in the 1800s, so did the slave population in the South. This is 1790. There are very few regions with a high population of slaves living in the South. By 1860, much of the South is slave owning, and a lot of it is 50% or more of the population of that state is made up of slaves. So we can see a clear connection between cotton increasing and the slave population increasing. And we can typically attribute that to Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin. So we're going to watch a little clip here to kind of go over the impact of the cotton gin.
The Old Northwest is not the only area experiencing population growth. In parts of the Old South, overplanting and erosion force ambitious farmers to search for more productive land in the South and West.
What Whitney's gin does is to make the plantation system feasible in the inland South. It used to be that the only kind of cotton in America that would grow needed a very simple kind of gin to sort of squeeze the seeds out, but it would only grow on the coast of South Carolina and Georgia. The invention of the cotton gin was designed to separate the fibers from the seeds of a special kind of cotton that would grow everywhere. And when that machine was perfected, it was possible to grow this fiber in the inland South and not just in these subtropical areas on the coast. Well, that meant that you could expand the slave plantation system into areas where it had never gone before.
Cotton demands fairly large plantations, and so the workforces grow, and the size of black communities who are on individual plantations becomes fairly large. Prior to the emergence of cotton is king, that's the phrase, the large plantations tended to be fairly selective and random, but that's going to become standard in what we call the Deep South, states like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, parts of East Texas. The investments are enormous for the planters.
Okay, we're going to stop there. Okay, so we know that Eli Whitney created this cotton gin that was used to separate the cotton fibers from the seeds. So you have something that you're able to make cloth with without having those rough seeds in it. What this did to the South is it actually led to more growth of cotton and more plantations. We're going to take a look at a document to kind of examine what Eli Whitney thought was going to happen when he created the cotton gin. So go ahead and flip your population chart to the opposite side, and we're going to look at document B. We're going to annotate that together so then you're ready to answer the questions. Okay, so find document B. Okay, we're going to mark this up, so have a highlighter ready, have your pencil ready as we start reading through the document. Okay, so this document is a letter written from Eli Whitney, who was the inventor of the cotton gin. I'd like you to highlight that and make a note that Eli Whitney was the inventor of the cotton gin. On September 11th, the letter addresses his trip to a southern cotton plantation where he discovers the need for a machine to clean cotton, creating faster production. Okay, we're going to read through his letter. Our main focus, our main information is going to come from the second paragraph. So Eli Whitney again is writing to his father. He says, "Dear parents, I went from New York with the family of the late Major General Greene to Georgia. I went immediately with the family to their plantation, about 12 miles from Savannah, with an expectation of spending 4 or 5 days and then proceed into Carolina to take to the school, as I have mentioned in former letters." So we know, I'm going to add a highlight here. We know that Eli Whitney is visiting a plantation, which is a large farm known for growing cash crops like cotton. Okay, he says, "During this time, I heard much said of the extreme difficulty in the ginning of cotton, that is, separating it from its seeds." So at this point in time, plantations that grew cotton, it was very labor intensive to be able to remove the cotton fibers from the seeds to make it actually usable. There were a number of very respectable gentlemen at Mrs. Greene's who all agreed that if a machine could be invented which would clean the cotton with expedition, which means speed in this reading, expedition means speed, so a machine that could clean cotton quickly, it would be a great thing both to the country and to the inventor. I involuntarily happened to be thinking on the subject and stuck out a plan of a machine in mind, which I communicated to Miller, Mr. Greene's property manager. Mr. Miller was pleased with the plan and said I should pursue an experiment because all I would lose would be my time, but if I succeed, there will be great profit. So Eli Whitney is going to create a machine to quickly clean cotton. That's his plan. So here again in this second paragraph, this is where we're going to get our key information that we'll use to help us answer questions. Whitney says, I have turned my attention away from school and intend to perfect the machine. I made one before I came to the South that required one man to turn the machine, which allows one man to clean 10 times as much cotton as he can in any other way before. So this machine that he created cleans the cotton much faster. So the work that was previously done by 10 men can now be done by 1. This also cleans it much better than hand cleaning. And he adds, the machine makes labor 50 times less without throwing any class of people out of business. So looking at this, based off of what Whitney is saying, the labor of cleaning cotton becomes much less with the cotton gin. So we should see a decline in demand for slave labor. Okay, that's just kind of how mechanics work. If you find a machine that can do the job much quicker where one person can manage it, there's not a need for the others. Okay, that's what should happen. But we know from the chart above that that's not what happens. Even though Whitney created the cotton gin in 1793, and the labor costs for this are much lower, the slave population continues to increase. Okay, so we're now ready to go answer the questions for document B. So go ahead and find your chart, and we're going to start filling this in. So for document B, according to this document, how did the production of the cotton gin affect slavery in the United States? What we should see, or according to document B, according to Eli Whitney's letter to his father, the slave population could go down because cleaning cotton got easier. The job of 10 men previously could now be done by just one man. Okay, what I'd like you to do is find some evidence. What quote or fact helps you prove this? So go back up to document B to see if you can find a quotation that would showcase how the labor is much less intensive. They don't need as many people to get the cotton clean. That would be found in paragraph 2. So go ahead and pause and add your own quotation for document B. Okay, after you have provided your quote to support that the cotton gin makes labor easier, we're going to go down and finish up what we covered from day 1. So we're going to try to contrast our information. We have certain facts that we think we know, but then we have information that contradicts that. So what we can see, we have 2 documents that have some contrasting information, or information that doesn't match what we think would happen. So fact 1 that I'd like you to write down is, after the cotton gin was created, the slave population continued to rise. So looking at document A, in the year 1793, the cotton gin was created, and the slave population after that point continues to go up. Okay. What contradicts this is that Eli Whitney's cotton gin made cleaning cotton easier, so the population should have gone down. Okay, take a minute to write those facts. Pause if you need to. The cotton gin was created. The slave population continues to rise. Eli Whitney made the cotton gin, which should have led to the population going down. Okay, and the final fact that I would like you to add from our chart is that in the year 1807, the slave trade ends, but the slave population still goes